The Tale of Shirai and the Silver Ladle Lost in the Well. Once upon a time, there was a monk named Shirai no Kimi. He passed away not too long ago. Initially, he lived in Takatsuji Nishinotoin, but later moved to an area east of Karasuma and north of Rokaku, residing near Rokakudo facing Karasuma. One day, while digging a well in his residence, he heard the sound of dirt hitting something that resonated like metal. Curious, Shirai no Kimi approached and discovered a silver bowl, kanamari. He took the bowl and kept it. Later, he added more silver and fashioned it into a small ladle, which he often carried. At some point, Shirai no Kimi had a close connection with a man named Fujiwara no Yoshisada, the governor of Bingo province. The governor's daughters often visited Shirai no Kimi's residence to wash their hair and bathe. On one such occasion, one of the governor's attendants took the silver ladle to the well where the silver bowl had originally been found. She placed the ladle on the well's cylinder to draw water, and, while assisting another woman in filling a water jar, accidentally knocked the ladle into the well. Shirai no Kimi witnessed the ladle falling into the well and immediately called someone to retrieve it, saying, "Fetch it up." He had people lower themselves into the well to search for the ladle, but it was nowhere to be found. Thinking it must have sunk deeper, he had several more people descend into the well to search, but they still could not find it. Astonished and perplexed, they gathered more people and drained the well to search thoroughly, but the ladle had completely disappeared. Some remarked, "It seems the original owner of the silver bowl, perhaps a spirit, reclaimed it." Thus, by finding the unrelated silver bowl and even adding more silver to create the ladle, the item was lost. Reflecting on this, one can only think that a spirit must have taken it back. It is a truly frightening thought. Thus, the story has been passed down. The tale of the ancient poem sung at the Kiyoku Palace. Yujingi Denyo Gugayin Die Bat. Once upon a time, during the period when the Kyōgoku Palace of Empress Jotomonin was resided in, around the 20th of the third month, the cherry blossoms were in full bloom, flourishing brilliantly before the southern facade. As the Empress rested in the main hall, she heard a most refined and divine voice near the space between the blinds on the southern veranda reciting the poem, "The cherry blossoms fall, their fragrance lingering still." The Empress, upon hearing this voice, thought to herself, "Who could it be that recites such a thing?" She had the screens raised and looked out from behind the curtains, but there was no sign of any person. Puzzled, she called many attendants and had them search, but they reported, "There is no one near or far." Startled, the Empress wondered, what could this be? Could it have been spoken by some spirit or god? Frightened by the thought, she quickly sent word to the regent at the Dekzet Hall, explaining the situation. The regent replied, "That happens often in that location, as people frequently recite poetry there." This response only deepened the Empress's fear. She remarked, "At first I thought it was merely someone enjoying the sight of the blossoms and that they fled in fear when questioned so closely. But now I learn that this happens often in that very place. It is truly frightening." Thereafter, her fear grew, and she avoided approaching the area altogether. Upon reflection, this could not have been the work of a fox or similar trickster. People suspected that some spirit, captivated by the beauty of the poem, had taken to reciting it whenever it saw the blossoms. However, while such spirits typically reveal themselves at night, for one to sing so clearly in broad daylight is indeed a fearsome thing. In the end, no one could determine what spirit it had been, and thus the story comes to a close. Thus, the story has been passed down. The tale of the two identical nurses at the house of Masamichi. Once upon a time, there was a man named Masamichi, a commander from the Minamoto clan, who was commonly known as the commander of Tanba. His residence was south of Shijo and west of Muromachi. One day, while Masamichi lived in this house, his nurse was holding his child, who was about 2 years old, playing with him at the southern side of the residence. She was alone with the child when suddenly the child began to cry out in terror. As the nurse joined in the child's wails, Masamichi, who had been at the northern side, heard the commotion. Without knowing what had happened, he grabbed his sword and rushed to the scene. There, he was astonished to find two nurses who looked exactly alike, standing with the child between them. Each one had grasped one of the child's arms and legs, pulling him between them. Masamichi was shocked and watched closely. Both nurses looked exactly the same, and he could not tell which one was the real nurse. He thought, one of them must be a fox or some other creature in disguise. So he brandished his sword and charged forward. In that instant, one of the nurses vanished as if she had been whisked away. The child and the remaining nurse lay unconscious on the floor, as if dead. Masamichi quickly summoned his attendants and called for a priest known for his powers. After a while, with prayers and rituals, the nurse finally regained consciousness. When Masamichi asked her, "What on earth happened?" she replied, "As I was playing with the young lord, a strange woman suddenly appeared from the inner rooms, claiming, 'This is my child,' and tried to take him. I resisted, but just as you arrived and charged forward with your sword, the woman let go of the child and fled into the inner chambers." Masamichi was deeply afraid after hearing this. From then on, people would say, it is dangerous to let young children play in places where no one else is around. Whether it was a fox or some other spirit, no one could tell. Thus, the mystery was never solved, and so the story has been passed down. The tale of the rice scattered above a child's pillow. Once upon a time, there was a man who, due to an unlucky direction, journeyed to a house in the lower part of the capital, taking along a young child. Unbeknownst to them, the house was haunted by spirits. As night fell, everyone in the house went to sleep. Near the child's pillow, a fire was burning close by, and two or three people lay sleeping nearby. The nurse, half awake and still feeding the child, noticed something strange. Around midnight, she saw the door of the storeroom slightly open, and through the crack, a figure about 5 or 6 inches tall, dressed in the robes of a noble of fifth rank, riding a horse, followed by around 10 others, crossed above the child's pillow. The nurse, terrified, thought, "This is dreadful." Yet she mustered the courage to grab a handful of scattered rice and threw it at the procession. The spirits scattered with a sharp "sa" sound and vanished. Later, as dawn approached, she grew more frightened, but when she checked the pillow, she found that the rice she had thrown was now stained with blood. She wondered, is this the spirit that has been lingering in the house for some time? Filled with fear, they quickly left the house. Thus, people would say, always scatter rice near young children. The nurse was also praised for her wisdom in doing so. From this, it is clear that one should never stay overnight at unknown places without careful consideration. There are indeed such haunted places in the world, and thus the story has been passed down. The Tale of the Minister of State, Sanzen no Kiyoyuki. Once upon a time, there was a man named Sanzen no Kiyoyuki, known as the Good Minister of State. He was the father of the revered priest Jozo, knowledgeable in all matters, including the practices of onmyo. During that time, there was an old, dilapidated house near Gojo and Horikawa that had long been considered a bad house and was left uninhabited. Since Kiyoyuki had no house of his own, he decided to buy this one, despite his relatives urging him against it, saying, "You must not move into a place known for its ill reputation." However, Kiyoyuki disregarded their warnings and chose an auspicious day, around the 20th of October, to move in. Upon arrival, he found a 5-room sleeping chamber in disrepair, surrounded by a garden with ancient pine trees, rooster comb trees, cherry trees, and others, all well established. The trees were so old that they could be home to tree spirits, and the garden was overrun with moss, showing no signs of human care. Kiyoyuki went up to the sleeping chamber and, upon inspecting the hidden bridge inside, saw that the shoji screens were all damaged. He cleaned the floorboards and laid down a mat he had brought, kindled a fire, and sat facing south on the mat. He directed the carriage to a nearby resting place and instructed his servants to come by in the morning. As Kiyoyuki rested alone, he thought, it must be nearing midnight. Suddenly, he noticed something moving in the ceiling beams, and to his astonishment, he saw faces appearing, each one different from the last. However, he remained calm, and soon the faces disappeared. After a while, he saw about 40 or 50 figures, each about a foot long, riding horses and crossing from west to east on the boardwalk. Kiyoyuki remained silent, watching them. Then he saw a painted door open about 3 feet, and a woman emerged, approximately 3 feet tall, wearing a hinoki bark-colored robe. Her hair fell gracefully over her shoulders, exuding an aura of purity and fragrance that was almost intoxicating. Her red fan partially obscured her face, which was pale and elegant. The unique features of her face and her long eyes were captivating. As Kyuki observed without a hint of fear, the woman withdrew back inside, closing the door behind her. Despite this, Kyuki maintained his composure, and as the bright moon illuminated the garden, he noticed an old man in pale yellow clothing kneeling by the bridge holding a letter up toward him. Kyuki called out, "What is it you wish to say, old man?" The old man replied in a soft, cracked voice, "I have lived here for many years. If you remain here, it will bring great sorrow. I have come to express my lament." Kyuki responded, "Your sorrow is unfounded. The reason for taking over a house belongs to its prior residents. Yet you have frightened people away, holding them here unlawfully. This is indeed inexcusable. True demons are fearsome only when they do not understand reason. You will surely bear the consequences of your actions. This is no different from an old fox frightening others." The old man replied, "Your words are just, and I have no excuse. I merely wish to express my long-standing attachment to this place. The frightening occurrences are not solely my doing. There are a few mischievous children who, despite our efforts to control them, continue to act out of their own accord. Now that you are here, what shall we do? There is no escape, and this is all that remains." Kiyoyuki advised, "That is a wise observation. Gather your family and relocate to a more suitable place." At that, the old man raised his voice, and about 40 or 50 responded in kind. When dawn arrived, Kiyoyuki's household members came to greet him. He returned home and afterward had the house renovated to his satisfaction. During his time there, he experienced no further disturbances. This tale illustrates that even for demons, wise and knowledgeable individuals can avoid misfortune, while foolish and thoughtless people can become prey to spirits. Thus, the story has been passed down.